So in this video, I wanted to briefly cover American law, politics, or whatever, because I know a lot of people from other countries like to see American politics and stuff, but some of the rules can be tough to follow, or they might not know the rules. So I just want to do a really quick video to just put everything out there so you guys know what's what. United States, there's 50 states, of course. Each state is pretty much their own thing, their own territory. They have their own governor, their own Supreme Court, basically, their own laws and rules. So once you go cross state border, you're in another state, you have other laws and rules to follow, pretty much. Those are the state's laws. And then there's the federal law, which goes over the state. So federal law and state law kind of conflicts here and there. Sometimes states say, well, our law is better than yours. Sometimes federal law says, well, our laws are better than yours. That also happened with legalizing marijuana. So some states are like, well, we're going to legalize marijuana either for medical use, for recreational use, whatever. The federal government was like, well, federally, marijuana is still illegal, so the feds can actually go and raid marijuana shops, basically, and just take all the profits, take all the weed, and also those people who are running the shops can't open banks or credit card accounts, business accounts, because it's still federally illegal. And so that would be kind of like an illegal business. So that's kind of the trouble between federal and state law. We're always fighting back and forth. That's that whole issue. So let's just jump over the federal stuff real quick, because that's pretty much what most people think about and talk about. Everybody knows about the executive branch, President of the United States. President can serve for 4 years, and he can do a maximum of 2 terms, so a maximum of 8 years. But of course, he can get impeached, or he can resign, or whatever. And if he gets killed or anything happens to him, the vice president steps up. If anything happens to the vice president, Speaker of the House steps up. Speaker of the House is pretty much the leader of Congress. Let's move over to Congress now. So Congress, there are 2 houses. And a lot of people try and get one of the houses on their side for their arguments. Because there are senators, the Senate is one of the House, and then there are representatives, part of the House of Representatives. House of Representatives, Senate. 2 houses within Congress. The Senate is easy to explain because every single state in the United States has 2 senators. California has 2 senators. Maine has 2 senators. Michigan has 2 senators. Texas has 2 senators. It doesn't matter your population, your size of your state. You just get 2 senators. So some people look at that and say, oh, that's overrepresentation for the smaller states. Bigger states, we get 2 senators, that's underrepresentation. Well, that's untrue. Well, that's true for the Senate. If you just look at the Senate, if you thought Senate was the only thing. However, there are 2 houses in Congress, as I keep saying, so it is untrue. The House of Representatives is the other part of Congress. House of Representatives gives you representatives equal to your population. So California has the most representatives because we're like the most populous state. Maine has far, far fewer representatives. And whenever there's a law or bill or anything that has to be passed, it has to pass both houses. So if you say this bill passed because there is more representation for whites or for the lower, smaller states, that is untrue because it had to pass both houses. And then when it comes to term limits, House of Representatives get unlimited 2-year terms, and Senate senators get unlimited 6-year terms. And then let's jump over to the Supreme Court of the United States. That's the 3rd branch. They're the ones who get to overlook the bills and see if they're unconstitutional or constitutional, whatever. And if there's some cases from state cases, they can bring them to the federal court, Supreme Court, and if it's big enough, and they can look over it. So the thing with the Supreme Court is there are no rules or laws really that say how many Supreme Court justices there can be. I believe it started off with 5. We're currently at 9. And then sometimes when a Supreme Court justice dies, they try and put another one in. And of course the other party says, no, you can't do that, or whatever. There's always some BS politics. And then back when FDR was president, he tried to, what they call, pack the courts by just adding more Supreme Court justices that would, like his stuff that he would push forward. So, he would just keep pushing more and more stuff forward. But of course, Congress was like, no, you can't do that. So we've just been stuck at 9 Supreme Court justices since then. Of course, some people have died, and then new ones have come in and stuff like that. And the term limits for Supreme Court, Of course, there are no term limits. They are there for life, but they can be impeached or thrown out. If they're really bad Supreme Court justices, or since they're there for life, maybe they're just become unfit for office. They're not mentally stable or whatever. Then they can get impeached. And there's been a lot of arguments over term limits because there weren't term limits for president of the United States back in the day. I believe FDR served 3 terms, and then they made a law saying, okay, you got to do term limits. And right now they're trying to do other term limits for Congress, House of Representatives, and Senate. And I don't know if that's going to pass. They can change it if they like. They can change the Supreme Court term limits if they want. I kind of doubt they would, because they always like their president going in and putting a Supreme Court justice that suits their party's need for life. But that's pretty much all I wanted to say, just talking about the overall structure of American government, or whatever, political structure and stuff, because there's a lot of people who try and jump into politics but don't really understand it. And this is like basic stuff. So once you understand this, then you can start kind of talking about more political stuff.